I'm Edward Shelswell White, and this is the Signal Report for January 2024. On the macro front, as we've been saying for several months now, a soft landing still seems to be the most likely result of the U.S. Federal Reserve's monetary policy over the last couple of years. While GDP was up nicely year over year in the third quarter, inflation continued its year-over-year declines in December. But because the current rate remains well above the Fed's 2% target, and because unemployment trends are doing nothing to concern the Fed either way, further tightening appears off the table. But as the inflation rate increased a couple of tenths in November, or versus November in December, this has dampened expectations of rate cuts, which the market, frankly, had already priced in, is reflected in bond yields and stock prices. So if the months ahead see inflation on an uncertain trajectory, the odds of rate cuts diminish, and it becomes more likely that the Fed will refrain from taking much action either way on interest rates until after the coming presidential election. What does this mean for the U.S. commercial aviation industry? Still using third quarter 2023 data, so these trends are largely unchanged from December's report. But as a reminder, as it has been for decades, airline revenue as a percentage of GDP continues to fall. And this is by design, despite higher average fares, because airlines continue to be under pressure from all sides thanks to long-term geopolitical and demographic trends that were in place long before COVID and continue after COVID. And those pressures are workforce shortages, supply chain uncertainty, demand realignment, i.e. the switch from business to more heavily leisure, and really the higher cost of everything. This means they're under pressure to shrink relative to GDP in order to maximize operating margins and their return on invested capital. The problem is airlines aren't tracking towards improved ROIC. Despite healthy operating revenue gains in the third quarter of 2023, operating costs rose faster, and this led to a nearly 25% drop in operating income year over year, despite a strong fuel cost tailwind helping them out. The cost of major new pilot contracts, by the way, aren't even really much reflected here, meaning that airlines' CASM-ex fuel will continue to rise in the years ahead. And if and when that fuel tailwind disappears, or worse yet, becomes a headwind, cost pressures on airlines will certainly almost lead them to meet profitability goals by matching supply to profitable demand in one of two ways. In markets that have inelastic demand and therefore can sustain price increases without capacity reductions, they'll keep their capacity and see higher fares. But markets that have elastic demand and therefore can't sustain price increases without capacity reduction, well, they're going to tend to see capacity reductions and higher fares. So what's the signal and implication for this for U.S. airports? Well, again, airlines are under pressure to increase unit revenues to meet their profitability goals, and they'll tend to do that by shrinking the size of the industry relative to GDP, as they have been doing for some time. So the implication for airports really is that airports really need to know, in as close to real time as possible, really two things. They need to know how profitable their service is for their airlines, overall, at the carrier level and at the route level. And then also know, in terms of market share, how are they doing in terms of attracting airline target customers to their airport, both by route and by geography. And then taking those two inputs and knowing how to apply them to take action, effective action, to improve performance of any underperforming routes and attract more airline target customers to your airport. And the airports that do that the most successfully will be the ones that not only grow air service, but frankly, just retain what they've already got. Well, that's it for the January 2024 Signal Report. If you like what you see here, please contact me, ESW, at signalaviationconsulting.com, so we can talk about how to help you find the signal in the noise for your aviation business. Otherwise, I'm Edward Shelswell White. Look forward to seeing you back here in late February when we give you the next version of the Signal Report to help you find the signal in the noise.